This is a no limit, no holds barred partnership. There is no limit to how UAE can partner with India. Qatar has had good relations with India. But when 8 Indian Navy veterans were accused of spying, they were working for a company in Qatar, and there would have been some sort of a talk, if not an outreach, at least a talk with the Taliban. The Qataris are extremely close to the Taliban. They host the Taliban. Jan friends, I'm Major Gaurav Arya and you're watching the Chanakya Dialogues English. Like this video, subscribe to our channel and don't forget to press the bell icon. The biggest story, perhaps of the month and many months to come, is 8 Indian Navy veterans who were on death row in Qatar now are free. 7 have come back to India and the last one is still busy doing some paperwork in Doha, and he too shall be back soon. Now, how did this come about? How did this magic happen? Now, before I tell you all the details and who did what and what was the behind the scenes story, let me give you a brief sort of a description of the environment that we're talking about. Now, Qatar is an oil-rich country. Qatar has LPG resources. Qatar is amongst the richest countries in the world per capita. The total population of Qatar, Qataris make up about 10 to 20% of the total population. The rest are, of course, expats. And Qatar is booming. It's recently held the World Cup, but Qatar is a conservative Muslim country. You know, when the World Cup happened, many people wanted to talk about gay rights and lesbian rights, and Qatar said no. It was with great difficulty that they created certain areas where people could go and have a beer. Now, football and beer go together. That is the European understanding. That is how people perceive it across the world. I mean, in South America, in Europe, football and beer go together. They said no to beer. He says, have lemonade. No. Qatar is an inflexible country. It is a Muslim country. Qatar is a country that does not get well along with Saudi Arabia. It's a country that has been at loggerheads with many other Muslim Arab countries. Qatar is also the country which in its capital Doha houses the leadership of the Hamas, leadership of the Hezbollah, and also leadership of the Afghan Taliban. Qatar has had good relations with India, but when 8 Indian Navy veterans were accused of spying, they were working for a company in Qatar and they were dealing with small submarines. And this was supposed to be a top secret project for the Qatari Navy, but apparently somebody accused them of spying for the Israelis. Now, what happened was that when they were accused of spying for the Israelis, they were immediately arrested. There was some sham trial that happened and they were sentenced to death. And what happened after that? What happened after that was that, India said, we are shocked. You've sentenced our people to death. There is no trial. But then back-end calculations and back-end contacts started happening. India put in place its massive diplomatic might. It started long back, but the peak was the Prime Minister of India, Narendra Modi, meeting with the Emir of Qatar at COP28 at the UAE. So there are photographs of him, being extremely happy and, shaking his hand and hugging him. And they discussed, I'm sure they must have discussed, freeing the 8 Indian people who were on death row. And suddenly, after Prime Minister Modi's meeting with the Emir of Qatar, suddenly we hear after a week or two that the death penalty has been dropped. In some cases, it has been now a life sentence has been made into a life sentence, 2 years, 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, depending on the quantum of punishment for everybody. Now, I knew it at that point in time when they were given the death sentence that they would come back safely. There was no way India was letting another country hang 8 of its former naval officers. The problem here was that, the system in Qatar was and is opaque. If betrayal of Qatar, and that too with Israel, and you know how the Muslim world feels about Israel for some reason, which I haven't been able to fathom so far, if this was such a serious crime that deserves the death penalty, and they were given the death penalty, then how is it that when the death penalty was cancelled and they were given terms in prison, how come somebody was given life, somebody was given 3 years, 5 years, which means that the Qataris themselves believed from day one that this was something that did not merit the death penalty. Otherwise, each and every one of them would have been given a life sentence at least. If you're not giving them death, give them life. Say that you will spend the rest of your life in a Qatari prison. That didn't happen. Somebody's given 3 years, 5 years, 10 years, 20 years. And then one fine day, 7 out of 8, land up in India. And nobody knew. Nobody in India knew. There were no television cameras. There were no media people chasing them. Like typically the Indian media reports, now the prisoners are free and they have left the jail. They've left prison and they're going towards the Indian embassy and we're trailing them. And that is their car. You see that black car there in that black car or that small little bus. And they've entered the Indian embassy. We're waiting for them to come out. Now they've come out. Now they're going to the airport. And what did you have at the airport? What did you eat? Did you have coffee? Did you have tea? All that nonsense that most of the Indian media does, that was missing because the media did not know. Now what happened behind the scenes, ladies and gentlemen? It's very important and it's instructive and it speaks about India's massive and growing might, diplomatic might. So, Prime Minister Modi meets the Emir of Qatar and very quietly, Dr. Jaishankar speaks to the Qataris and speaks to the Iranis and he tells the Iranis to leverage their friendship with the Qataris and put in a word. And I'm very sure, and this is something that is not being discussed in the media, but I can't but help, believe that there would have been some sort of a talk, if not an outreach, at least a talk with the Taliban. The Qataris are extremely close to the Taliban. They host the Taliban. The Taliban has been there for more than 20 years. The Taliban have their office in Doha. The Taliban has a formal office in Doha. The Hamas has an office in Doha. The Hezbollah has an office in Doha. So, here's the thing. India speaks to all these stakeholders, and while they are at it, another person, a very senior person in the Indian establishment, travels very quietly in secret to Qatar and has a series of meetings. Ladies and gentlemen, I'm talking about the National Security Advisor, Mr. Ajit Doval. He traveled in absolute secrecy. Nobody came to know. The media had no idea. He just traveled. He landed in Qatar. He spoke to them, came back. He had 6 meetings with them, all of them on Qatari soil. He went to Qatar 6 times. And after going to Qatar, the deal was set and Qatar released all the Indians. 7 are back, as I said. 1 will come back in 2 or 3 days. There is some paperwork to be done. He will do the paperwork and he'll also be, welcomed into India. He'll be back. People have spoken a lot about Prime Minister Modi's leadership and the Pakistani especially. They're absolutely gaga. They're saying that this tells you that Indians believe in the fact that, let's not leave anybody behind. Let's get everybody out. Every human life, every Indian life is precious to the Indian leadership. This has passed a fantastic message across the world. You see, a hardcore Muslim nation, no democracy, where the Emir is the big boss, and then India manages to free people who are there on accusations of spying for Israel. It can't get worse than this. My friends, it can't get any worse than this. And they are back and they are in India. Also, now people are starting to speak about the LNG deal with Qatar. And what is this deal? This deal is a 20-year deal for Qatar to supply LNG to India at the total cost of 78 billion US dollars. Over a period of 20 years, India will give Qatar $78 billion in lieu of LNG supply. And in this entire matrix, in this entire figuring of the mathematics and the money given and money taken, India will save $6 billion. So when India goes to Qatar, India goes as a customer. India has found a middle path, and the Qataris have released our brothers who are back in India now. Now, there are other things also happening. The BAPS, the Swami Naran temple, it is going to be inaugurated tomorrow by Prime Minister Modi. The Prime Minister will go, he'll inaugurate the temple tomorrow in UAE, again, which is a Muslim area. And he will do it there, and this is going to be the first temple there, such a grand temple, fantastic temple, and he's going to be addressing people in a public gathering called Ahlan Modi or Welcome Modi. Ahlan is apparently the local word for welcome, and he's going to be speaking to the diaspora, and he's going to lay out the roadmap for a relationship with the UAE for the next decade, 2 decades, 3 decades. And the UAE diplomats have been saying, and they're saying again, that this is a no limit, no holds barred partnership. There is no limit to how UAE can partner with India. And that's a big deal. But it also helps the UAE. This is not just a diplomatic win for India. It's also a massive diplomatic victory. This huge temple, the Swami Naran temple which is being built, it is a huge, huge win for the UAE people and the government of the UAE. And why is that? You see, for long, apart from Dubai, because UAE is a bunch of countries. And the reason why I say that this has been a huge diplomatic win for the UAE is that the inauguration of this temple, which is happening tomorrow, 14th of February, it gives, you know, the UAE to tell the world that this is a place where everybody is welcome. It's not just a Muslim place. It's not just a place where you can have grand mosques, but you can't have a temple, you can't have a synagogue, you can't have a church, you can't have a gurudwara, you can't have any of these things. It's not like that. So I think this is a huge message which is being passed by the UAE to the rest of the world. And you know, the cherry on the cake is that the Prime Minister on 14th of February, that is tomorrow, after doing all this, after inaugurating the temple, the Prime Minister is going to take a flight and go all the way to Qatar. Now, this is surprising. Not surprising for me because I follow these things very closely, but surprising for most of the people because a Prime Minister's program is chalked out months in advance. Months in advance. And the media knows about it, and the media already, you know, media goes into this build-up mode and people are discussing what are the pros, what are the cons, there are articles being written, etc. But in this case, nobody knew. Only when those 7 Indians landed in India, within a few hours, the Ministry of External Affairs announced that the Prime Minister of India will go to Qatar. This is probably a thank you visit, but it's also a visit where Prime Minister Modi will sign big deals. And we hope to see, you know, a better relationship between India and the rest of the Muslim world, especially the Arab world. The Arab world counts, you know, in India's calculus, the Arab world is extremely important. Saudi Arabia is a friend, the UAE is a friend, and we hope that India and Qatar will remain friends for a very, very long time. With that, I come to the end of this video, and now for question and answers. The first question is from Sriram S. Raghavan. Jai Hind, Major Sir, my name is Sriram. Hello Sriramji, Jai Hind. The 42 Air Force squadron strength was calculated before the 5th generation fighter aircraft came into play. Do you think this number of 42 squadrons should be a lot more now given the advancement in enemy's capabilities? Yes, I believe so. You're absolutely right. And you see, but Air Force still maintains formally that the strength is 42. That is the authorized strength. So unless the Air Force changes it from 42 to let's say 52 or 55 or whatever, I can't do it on my own. But I agree with you. And it's not just about 5th generation fighters. That's not what it is about. It's also about the capabilities, like you very rightly mentioned, capabilities. Pakistan has no capabilities, but capabilities of countries like China. And also how India sees its role. It's not just limited to China. How India sees its role in this changing world. You know, world riddled with conflict. You have Russia-Ukraine happening. You have Israel-Hamas happening. So where does India see itself? Yes, I think you need far more squadrons, but you know, it's getting a bit difficult to reach to the point of 42. Let's see how it unfolds. Dr. Harshal Mehta, Jai Hind and Parakramo Vijayate, Major Sahib. Jai Hind, Dr. Harshal and Parakramo Vijayate to you. If D-grade Canada is not cooperating in any manner for taking stringent action against Khalistani goons and company, then the sympathizers, then why India has not cut off all diplomatic ties with Canada? What in return we get from such a poor country who doesn't give a damn about our interest in government? I don't think it's that simple, Harshal. This is slightly more complicated. The problem is not with Canada, the problem is with Justin Trudeau. And now, what you're hearing is Justin Trudeau is about to go. And the next guy will understand our position better. With that hope, we continue to engage with Canada. Again, I say the problem is not with Canada. The problem is with a certain political mindset that survives and thrives because of Khalistani support. Dhruva Jyoti Deka. Jai Shri Ram, sir. Jai Shri Ram, Dhruva ji. I am from Assam, India. As you mentioned many times about the chances of India and China war. As we know, the China major threat could be chicken neck of India. So there is a high chance of cutting the connection of India with Northeast states. What India have done so far to prevent it? India could stay in stronghold apart from drills? And my second question is that you may take some series to explain some problems that arises in different part of India, like illegal immigration in Northeast by Bangladeshis. Thank you. Jai Bir Lachit. Jai Bir Lachit. See, I'll tell you. Recently there was an exercise, a massive Air Force, Army and Navy exercise in the Chicken Neck. War plans are ready. If China tries something funny, we have a response. There was an exercise hardly 2 weeks back. We covered it in the Chanakya Dialogues. So it's not like India is not doing anything. There are proper plans. This is probably somebody's AOR, area of responsibility in the army, and people are doing everything that they can. The Army, Navy and the Air Force. In fact, when I say Navy, you'll say, where does the Navy come in? Well, Marcos were there in the exercise also, Marine Commandos. So I guess the Navy was also there. So not a problem. And illegal immigration in the Northeast by Bangladeshis, yes, I've been talking about it very often. I've been talking about illegal immigration, especially in Assam. Assam, certain areas in Assam where Al-Qaeda has found a stronghold, or you have a lot of Rohingyas. Rohingyas were thrown out actually by Mr. Hemant Biswa Sarma, but a lot of Bangladeshi refugees are there. They've settled down. They're throwing out the original people from there, and they're, with their own aggressive brand of way of life. So they're pushing out people, and there is a great deal of stress in Assamese society because of these outsiders coming in. And the Assamese, irrespective of their religion, are fighting back now. Ramoski. Jai Hind Major Bhai. Jai Hind Ramoski ji. Why is Oman not part of IMEC even though they are not a hostile nation? They are also close to mainland India. I don't know why. I guess there is some agreement between nations that the IMAC should take a certain route, and which is why they are not part of it. But, one would have to go deep into issues and then figure out why they are not part of it. But I think even without them, it's going on pretty fine. That is my take, but I need to do deeper research to answer your question more intelligently and more fully, which I have not done, by the way, right now. So thank you very much, ladies and gentlemen, for watching this video. If you like this video, press the like button, subscribe to our channel. Don't forget to press the bell icon. Jai Hind, Vande Mataram, Bharat Mata Ki Jai.